Cooper Talk.
Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guest. And I gotta tell you, people, like a few months ago on Facebook, one night, I always screw around on Facebook, I posted a picture of a Yingling and an Angry Orchard and a Smirnoff airplane bottle and a Jim Beam airplane bottle. And I said, if you get it, you get it. And some people, they did. They said, oh, I got knocked down. Some people said I'm going to have one hell of a hangover. But it was in reference to the song Tubthumping, which my guest sang. But he also has a documentary. Someone sent me the trailer for it. And it's I Get Knocked Down. So he went from singing, he's in filmmaking, he does everything. And my guest is Dunstan Bruce. How you doing, Dunstan?
I'm fine, thanks. It's rainy and dark here at the moment, so...
So you're like, thank God. But you have plants behind you, so it's good. I want to start off, I want to talk about the music career in Chumbawamba, but I want to start off about the filmmaking. I want to talk about what made you decide to do the documentary I Get Knocked Down? I mean, there had to be something that catapulted you to it. But how did that start, and where does your love of film come from?
This could be a really long answer.
That's fine.
If you want a really long answer. So in about 2000, I sort of made a documentary with a director called Ben Unwin called Well Done Now Sod Off, which told the potted history of Chumbawamba. And we made it then because it was like it was a year or so after Tubthumping. And we felt as though nobody actually knew the history of Chumbawamba at all. And so we thought it would be a good idea to make a film about who we were. But that film never saw the light of day. You can find it on YouTube in sections, actually. But then, in about 2009, having left Chumbawamba in 2005, in 2009 I had the opportunity to go to China with Sham 69. To make a documentary about them touring China. So I'd never done anything like that before. And I just thought, I had the confidence to think, yeah, I can do that. That should be all right. And so me and another cameraman went on tour with Sham 69 around China, and we made a documentary about it. And it was, it did really well at film festivals. Again, that never saw the light of day, because Jimmy Percy, the lead singer of Sham 69, stopped the film coming out because he wasn't in the band at that time, and it was his music. So I then went on to make a documentary about the Levelers called A Curious Life. And whilst I was making that, I decided that I wanted to make a film about what can you possibly do if you're a political band and you enter the mainstream, which is what happened to Chumbawamba, obviously. So making the Levelers film was like a good practice run at trying to put a film together about a band that had politics. And so by that point, Chumbawamba had called it a day as well, and I felt as though I couldn't really make the film whilst Chumbawamba still existed in some form. So once the band came to an end, I thought, all right, I'm going to try and make this film now. Anyway, that was about 8 years ago. It's taken me about 8 years to get to this point of making the film. So I set off with this idea of making a film about political bands entering the mainstream, and can you actually achieve anything? Can you make a difference? But along the way, I met this really brilliant documentary maker called Sophie Robinson, who got involved in the making of the documentary as well, and she became co-director with me. Now she's a proper documentary maker, and so she taught me a lot about the structure and form and all that sort of thing. I just used to come up with ridiculous ideas, and then Sophie would make them happen, sort of thing. So we had a lot of fun in making the film. We did a Kickstarter, raised a lot of money through Kickstarter, but then never managed to get any other funding. So it took us a really long time to get the film made. But in the making of the film, we had a really good time making it, because we could make the film that we wanted to make. And as Sophie used to say herself, we used this sort of maxim that was like sort of an idea of Chumbawamba's, really, is that Chumbawamba never made the same album twice. Every album was different to the previous one, and it was a deliberate attempt to never get stuck in any sort of style or groove or whatever. So we wanted to make a film that sort of reflected that idea. So we just had loads of fun in deciding how each scene could be and what could be going on in it, and so we ended up with I Get Knocked Down 8 years later.
Well, it's amazing, and I'm sure and people don't understand this. People see a documentary, because I used to live in Hollywood, and I have friends who are filmmakers, and people see a documentary, and they think, oh, it's just this, that's nothing. But they don't understand how much footage is shot. Like, they don't understand. It's like you shoot everything usually, and then it really comes down to the storytelling, because else it would just be a garble of shit. It would just be this and this concert. And it really fascinates me. And, for you, with a creative mind and a singer, sometimes it's hard for when you're creative to get rid of stuff, because it's your story. But thank God, because you're like, oh, no, I want to keep that. And then someone, like you said, the person you work with is like, well, that doesn't really put the story forward, and we're creative, we're child. We're like a child.
Yeah,
like,
there were a lot of times when Sophie, I'd go, look, I've cut this scene, it's hilarious, it's really good, it's brilliant. And Sophie would say, look, that's only going to be funny to 8 people. There's only 8 people going to understand what you're on about there, and you're not making it for the rest of the band. Our idea became that we wanted to make a film that you didn't necessarily have to be a fan of Chumbawamba to appreciate the film, or even be a fan of that song. It was just like we were trying to talk to a lot of people, to a much wider audience, and make it more than just a music documentary. We didn't just want to make a music documentary. We wanted to make something that said something more than that.
Well, you said earlier, because you wanted to see when a political band gets into the mainstream. Were you political as a youth? I mean, how did Chumbawamba become a political band? Because I know you're a few years older than me, and I know punk was there, but when did you start becoming political in your mindset? As a kid, were you that way, or when did you start getting that political mindset?
I think it was totally punk, because there was a lot of people in bands that I liked. That like when I was like 16, I was a fan of the Clash. I loved the Clash, and they were one of the bands who were saying stuff that had a political message. And then what happened was Rock Against Racism became an organisation in the UK, started doing gigs. As part of like the anti-Nazi League and stuff like that, and so because that became quite a big movement, and a lot of bands were doing those shows, and they were bands that I was really into. So that just seemed like a really easy way to get into politics. It's like, oh, my heroes are saying this, maybe they've got a point. And so for a while, I was sort of like, I sort of like started to read into all that sort of stuff and thought, yeah, I get that, I totally get that. And if these cool people think this is good, then I'm gonna I'll sit up and listen, which is really formative. And then by about 81, 82, I started listening to Crass and other anarcho-punk bands. And the stuff that they were saying was also like incredibly political. And we as a band, we were a band by then, we sort of totally took that on board and started to think about how we could combine politics and music together in a way that would get our message across.
What was the punk scene like back then? I've talked to people who were young punks, like James Stevenson said, if you were a punk, they would chase you down the streets. He said it was just different. And I'm from the East Coast. Punk was different here. Because it's just different. There wasn't we didn't have the whole division. But what was it like being a punk when punk was starting to come up? Because I'm sure old people are like, oh yeah, and there's probably like the big guys are like, oh, fuck these little, But what was it like for being a punk and even being in that circle because you're playing?
In the 70s, it was pretty scary where I grew up because I grew up in the northeast of England in a really small industrial town. And so it was very easy to stand out. And so there was a small, cabal of punks who you sort of started to identify, and recognize. And so you all gravitate together. And so there's a real gang mentality. There was a real gang mentality about it. But it was like, it was a magnet. Punk was a magnet for freaks and outsiders, really. And that was, so you started to find your people. And because it was so other back then, it was threatening to a lot of people who didn't understand it or didn't accept it or acknowledge it. So you would get chased and you would get beaten up and you would get, I got jumped loads of times coming out of pubs or in town and stuff like that. We used to go to, when I was a teenager, I used to go to a club called the Middlesbrough Rock Garden, which the sense of camaraderie in the club was absolutely amazing. But they did this thing where they started putting punk gigs on the bikers' night when it was bikers' night. So obviously all the bikers were really pissed off that suddenly there were punk gigs. So obviously there was violence. There just was. And then skinheads started coming to all the punk gigs, and then there was just violence. So it was like a violent scene. But in the midst of all that, you sort of became aware of the fact that, you didn't have to be Jimmy Page or Richie Blackmore to be in a band. And so that element, the creative thing about punk was brilliant. How it liberated you creatively was amazing. But yeah, I remember once having had an imprint of a shoe on my forehead there, just from getting kicked in. And that.
It's crazy. Yeah. It is nuts when you look back at it. Now, how did Chumbawamba come together? How did you guys start?
So a couple of people in Chumbawamba, quite a few people in Chumbawamba from another industrial town in the northwest of England called Burnley. Boff and Damba had already started Chumbawamba in about 81 or something, 82. But when we moved into the squat in about 82, 83, 82. When we moved into the squat, then it really started to. We really started to take it seriously. So I met Boff and Damba by putting an advert in a music shop in Leeds, looking for musicians to join a band that I'd got together, and Boff answered the advert because it had loads of cultural and social references in, and it wasn't just a list of bands that I was into. So that sort of intrigued him. So then I met him, and then actually his band Chumbawamba was a lot more interesting than my band. So I just ended up joining Chumbawamba. But when we moved into the squat, there was just four of us. We started off as a four-piece, and then it just grew and grew. Anybody who moved to the house, they were like, "Well, do you want to join the band?" And they were like, and most people were like, "Well, yeah, I'm not really a musician, but I'd love to be in a band." And even to this day, Alice would probably still say that she's not a musician, and she was just like, she was just a writer who fell in with the wrong people, sort of thing, and ended up spending 25 years in a band. So and that was a lot of us were like that. That was our we were just more enthusiastic than we were adept at playing instruments and stuff like that. So when we started up, it was just about the passion of it.
Now, how would you guys write? Like, what was your writing process? Because I do stand-up comedy occasionally. I used to do it for a long time, and I was talking to someone about this yesterday. How I can't sit down and write. Like, something will pop in my head, and I go, "Oh, that's a stupid Facebook post," or, "Hey, if I get on stage, I'll do it." And that's just the way I write. But for you guys, first of all, because you want to have a political message, and there's ego. And anytime you have creatives in a room, there's ego, and you're gonna. Because there's a bunch of you. As I said, there's four, then there's seven. And the person who's a quiet one's always go, "Well, I got this idea." How would you guys, in the beginning of your career, how did you guys start writing? Did each of you have certain tasks, or would you brainstorm?
No, what we would do is that we would always decide what we were going to write about, what subjects we thought we should write about, or what was going on in the world. Really early on, really early on, it was like, let's have a song about animal rights. Let's have a song about us being anti-nuclear war. Let's have a song about us being against, the work. We would just choose a topic and we would write about it. Let's have a song about, equal, like racism or sexism or homophobia and stuff like that. And so different people would go away and go, right, I'm going to have a go at writing something about that. And then we'd all bring all the lyrics together. There was about four of us, 4 or 5 of us who wrote lyrics. And what Boff was brilliant at, what he was really brilliant at, was then taking those lyrics and melding them into like verse chorus, middle eight, verse chorus sort of thing. He could take different bits, so that you had a couple of people writing about the same topic. He could bring those two topics together and even come up with a melody for the chorus. So he was really good at that sort of thing. So it was always always like a collective, sort of process. And sometimes, it'd be like, right, he's put this and this together, it doesn't quite work. Alice, you go off and just get that to work, or, can you just phrase that in a different way, and all that sort of stuff. So it was all a collective process. And in the meantime, there were other people in the band who were the musicians. There were a few. Harry was definitely a musician. He has always been a brilliant musician. He stood out as being really, as being a cut above the rest of us, really. And Boff was always really, really, really good at writing, writing melodies and stuff like that. And so, but some of us, like me, Danbert and Alice, I mean, to be honest, none of us were singers. And so we had this thing, there were so many of us, we were this collective of 8 people, that we wanted to do, we had to find ways of writing music that incorporated all our skill sets. And some of our skill sets were quite small, and so it was like, it could get tricky at times. How you're thinking, right, can you just try this bit, see if you can get this to work? Whereas there's people like Lou, who had this background to singing in folk clubs when she was a teenager. So she had a beautiful voice. She has a beautiful voice. But then she was really nervous about getting up on stage. Whereas me, Danbert and Alice, at that time couldn't sing to save our lives, but we just loved showing off. So it was like it was a balancing act between us all, and making sure that when we constructed a live set, that people were equally involved in the whole thing.
Now, how long was it? You guys you're writing together and all this, but how long is it till you get really serious and you say, you know what, we're gonna do this? Because we can all sit there, you might be a hobbyist, and it's not an easy business. It's not easy. But how long was it till you guys said, all right, let's do this, man?
It's funny because we were always really serious about being a band, and we always like, nobody had a career. We all took part-time jobs to be able to help do the band, and we'd and that went on for quite a while. But I remember there was a point in the 90s, the early 90s, where we made the decision that we were going to do it. We were going to do it seriously. We were all going to give up anything else that we were doing, and we were going to start paying ourselves a really small wage to commit to doing the band. And that was like a really significant moment, because it did feel like, oh, we're taking this really seriously now, and we're trying to be something. We always felt as though we were a gang, and that we were like a political band who had a lot to say. And we used to do loads and loads of benefit gigs. People would come to us all the time to ask us to do benefit gigs. But then it got to a point where we were getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we had to make that decision. We got a booking agent. And we were on a small independent label and stuff like that. So it started to feel as though it was getting serious. But we never But it's funny because we never thought that the end point would be what it was, and that was never that we never wanted that to be the end point. We never thought how we were going to have a hit single. You know, that was never part of the discussion. What we really loved about the band was that we were a self-contained unit, and it worked. It was like a little cottage industry, and everybody had different roles within the band. You know, we all had jobs within the band, and that really paid off later because we treated each other equally, and no one person was the leader of the band. And you know, like, even if you hadn't written a single word or composed a single note to a song, you were still a songwriter on that song, and that was really important for us, that we shared absolutely all that sort of thing, because it always felt like it was a collective effort, and we never wanted to split that up into jobs and, you know, you get paid for this and you don't get paid for that sort of thing.
No, you sit there. You made the decision. Quit the day jobs. We're going to do this. You're working. You're doing everything. How do you end up at EMI? What was your path to that? Because you had saying derogatory things about EMI, and you know it's just funny. But you know that's happening in America right now. There's a show Saturday Night Live. This guy, they fired him because he made some comment before he got hired, and now 4.5 years later he's hosting next week. So it's always weird how when something's hot, executives always go, well, they have amnesia. I don't remember that. But what was your path to EMI? How did you guys end up on there?
Let me just tell you another story about this based on that, than what you just said, that we always thought was hilarious. In about 1995 or 96, we did this live TV show in Germany, where we were on quite early in the day, but Smashing Pumpkins were headlining. And so by the time they came on, it was live TV in Germany on WDR, and we were all in the dressing room, and we got told that we had to close the door of the dressing room, and we couldn't watch Smashing Pumpkins walk on stage. And we just thought this was the most ridiculous thing we'd ever heard. And so it happened. We tried to watch them walk on stage, and people wouldn't let us. Security wouldn't let us. And so we just thought this is ridiculous. So we got so we were like, right, what are we going to do? You know, we've got to do something to fuck things up a bit. So we got Dambert, who was always willing to do anything outrageous. We got Dambert to take all his clothes off. We wrote punk on his chest, really big, and he walked on stage whilst Smashing Pumpkins were playing. And he just walks on stage, puts his finger in the air. He might point at the punk on his thing, and then he starts walking off. And a security guard comes running across, and he gets taken out to the compound where we were playing, and he's naked. He's just out in the middle of nowhere. Anyway, that went out on live TV. As it happened, Smashing Pumpkins just thought it was funny, and they didn't know why we were doing it. They just thought we were, you know, drunk and that. But after that happened, immediately after that happened, we had people coming out of our dressing rooms going, "You will never be on German TV ever again. I can assure you, that's it. Your career is over in Germany." I mean, obviously, a year later, Tubthumping happened. We were even signed. So the irony is, we actually signed to EMI Germany, not even EMI UK. We signed to EMI Germany because we were so big in Germany. EMI knew about us, and they offer. When we got well,
first of all, real quick, why were you so big in Germany? What was there a certain reason?
Because we toured there so much. We toured there. We'd done that thing that is basically how you get big somewhere. You just go back again and again and again and again, and you play to more and more people every time. And there was something about what we were doing that really tapped into a German counterculture, which is huge. So we were playing. Germany's got this. I used to have. I don't know whether it still does now, but it used to have social centres all over the country, where they were run by young, politically active people, and we'd go and play them all. You know, and so there'd be community hubs for, you know, like people with similar views to us and similar ideas. So we'd be playing these bigger and bigger gigs, and they just felt fantastic. It felt like it felt like celebration every night, and so we'd built up this huge following in Germany that was big enough for for people to notice. So we were like, so we'd be start to appear. Germany in general had a much better attitude towards how you were treated as a band going to play there. In the UK, you used to get treated really, really badly. It was like it was an inconvenience that you were even at a venue. But in Germany, you'd turn up. Sometimes you'd play to 6 people. There'd be a fridge. There'd be an 8-foot high fridge that's just full of alcohol. Doesn't matter how many people are at the gig. They're going to treat you really well, and they really appreciate the fact that you were there. So we loved Germany. We absolutely loved. We did really well in a lot of Northern Europe, but Germany in particular, we had this huge following. So when we were trying to get a record deal, EMI Germany they made that weirdly. We had all these arguments about whether we should sign to EMI, having appeared on a Fuck EMI compilation in the late 80s, early 90s. It just seems really hypocritical for us then to sign to EMI. But EMI Germany, their offer and the control that they gave us over deciding when we wanted to tour, what records we wanted to put out, how we wanted to look, how their albums were going to look, doing all the artwork, all the posters, where we were going to play, all that sort of stuff. They just said, look, you obviously know how to do that. You've obviously done a really good job of it over the years. You carry on doing that. We'll just facilitate the putting out the records and all that sort of stuff. So that relationship really was really good, was really positive. But then we got sold back. We kind of you feel a bit weird because you then get sold back to EMI UK. EMI UK were not interested in us whatsoever. They didn't want it. They didn't want us. They didn't want these, this bunch of troublemakers on their label. We just didn't fit into the sort of bands that they were promoting at the time. So that relationship was really awkward. But then in America, we signed to Republic, who were part of Universal. And it was. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, you're bouncing around, but you have success. Okay, I mean, you got a record deal, which that's what people die for. How does Tubthumping become and I know I ask actors this when they're on TV series. I ask musicians, did you think it would be a hit? They always go, you can never tell. There's actors I know who've been cast in these great shows, and they go, after 4 episodes, it got canceled. Because then you sign up and you end up on this crappy series for 2 years, but you're on it because the money's great. I mean, in all honesty, how did Tubthumping come about? And did you think, like, when you guys first of all, how did you guys come up with the song?
Okay, we'd done an album that wasn't very good. None of us really liked. It was this album called Swingin' Raymond. Nobody really liked it that much within the band, and so we had to make a decision about whether we were going to do another album and what we were going to do it about. And we felt as though we'd lost our way a little bit. And so a couple of people in the organisation left the band, and it was all a bit shaky for a while. But then we made a collective decision, right? Let's just do it. Let's try and do one more album and see if we can do it. Let's put everything into this album. What should we do it about? So we're like, okay, let's do it about Leeds, because we all lived in Leeds. Let's do an album where all the songs have a connection with Leeds. And so that's what we did. We wrote songs that were in some way linked to our experience of being in Leeds, and that's what Tubthumping was. It was a song about this pub called Ford Green that was in a part of town where quite a few of us lived. I think me, Boff. Me and Boff definitely lived in there. I can't remember who else. Danber, maybe, I don't know. There was a few of us that lived around this area where this pub was, and Boff used to have a neighbour, an Irish neighbour, who the song is kind of about. It's about him going to walking home from the pub. So that's why there's that Danny Boy bit in it. So we were like putting all these different elements together, and I don't think that song is necessarily immediately obvious that it's got political content in a way, because a lot of people just thought it was a drinking song. But that's kind of inevitable, because we were writing a song about going to the pub and about how it's this community hub, and how people have this feeling of resilience and all that sort of thing, and how you meet people in the pub and how important places like that are. And we were trying to encapsulate all those ideas in a song. But the last bit that we came up with, we had all the other bits, but we didn't have the chorus. Weirdly, the bit, the I get knocked down bit, that was the last bit that came. And in fact, we were using as a placeholder. Do you know there's a Beastie Boys song, something root down or something, is it?
I'm not
Get
sure.
your root down. Anyway, we were using this Beastie Boys thing as a placeholder, because we liked something about the rhythm of it or something, or there was something about it that it sort of worked. Anyway, then one morning, Bob just turned up at the studio and was like, I've thought of this line. I've got it. I've thought of this line. And we'd had other attempts at trying to think of what that line was. We were like, no, that's not right. But then when he came up and he goes, look, it's this thing. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never going to keep me down. And then we were like, yeah, that could work. So I recorded that. I recorded that vocal, and then we put loads of other vocals on top of it, and it just worked. But it was just a song on an album. That's all it was. It was just like, we've struggled with this song for ages. We've got it. We've got the song. So we started touring. We went on tour before the album came out, and we were doing all them songs off the album. And that song was going down really well. People were going, that's got to be the single, that one. And it's weird, like the songs that we'd done previously, where the structures are really similar and the ideas are really similar. But there was like a song we used to do called Mouthful of Shit that's structured really similarly. There's like verses, a middle eight bridge thing into a chanty chorus, and then a bit with Lou singing really sweetly. So it had all them elements, but it just felt like with this we'd got it. We'd worked out how to put all those bits together properly, but we didn't know it was going to be a hit. I think that is a sort of a discussion / argument we've always had within the band about whether it was an accident or whether it was inevitable that we would eventually have a hit. Not ever thinking it would be the of the magnitude that it was, but whether we'd learned how to write a hit single sort of thing.
Now you said
we were obsessed with that idea because KLF had done this book about how to write a hit single, and we just thought, oh, that's really funny that they've tried to turn it into a science.
Now, what was the political message in that? You said there was a political message in that song.
Yeah, well, it was just about resilience. It was just about people's resilience. It's just about working class resilience, really, and not letting. In a way, it's like saying. It's basically don't let the bastards grind you down. That's what it is. Which is which for me is from a 1960s kitchen sink drama from the UK. It's Saturday Night, called Saturday Night Sunday Morning, where it's a line in that film, don't let the bastards grind you down. That's one thing I learned. And so it's sort of that idea, that not only is it a thing about how important it is, particularly now. I don't think we realised at the time, but particularly now when communal places are closing down. There's the number of pubs that have closed down in the UK over the last 10 years is outrageous. They closed down at an enormous rate, and so they were sort of community hubs in a way, and they were where you would meet people. And I think it's sort of in it's in the authorities or the government's interest for people not to be able to meet up to share ideas and discuss ideas, and now we do it all online. So it feels now when I think about that song, it feels quite nostalgic, that idea that you used to go to the pub to meet everybody.
Oh yeah, I love it. I always say in my area, there's no more dive bars. Like I used to love the old dive bar in LA. We had this old dive bar, and now it's all bar restaurants. You can't. I always say you don't see like a 80-year-old guy drinking a Boilermaker at the end of the bar telling a story anymore. And you don't. And it does get sad. And you're right about social media. Because, people argue on social media, but as you always said, when we used to go to the bars, if someone was talking out of line, you'd be like, you get punched in the mouth. And it's nothing, but then you can't do that now. But it was like, you knew if you were talking, and we would have, I remember I had two friends who were completely different, so far left and so far right. But we would come to my place in LA, and we would hang out, we'd drink, and they would talk, and they would argue, and I would be fascinated, and they would all sometimes give up a little. Well, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. And it was wonderful. But now you can't do it because online, if you, everyone says, you're stupid. So, anyway. So, Tubthumping. The song comes out. When do you know you have a hit? How long? I mean, all of a sudden, it changes your whole career. It starts blowing up in the UK first, right?
Yeah, it was weird, actually. We sort of knew it was going to be a hit before it was. Because it was all based on pre-sales then. It was when, physical copies, CD singles, in fact. It was... So we knew what the pre-sale was before it came out. So we knew it was going to do really well. But you still can't beat that moment when you hear, when you listen to the charts. I mean, obviously that doesn't happen now. But back then, you would listen to the charts and you'd wait to see where your song was in the charts. And we did that. We didn't know where it was going to be. And it never got to number one in the UK. It only got to number two. But it was number two for about 3 or 4 weeks. It was kept off number one by Men in Black.
Okay.
That was number one for about 3 or 4 weeks in the UK.
So no, go ahead.
Sorry, go on.
No, go on. You go ahead.
No, so when that moment happens, it's absolutely brilliant. But we were surprised. We were totally shocked because we didn't know, because we didn't set out to write a hit single. I mean, I know some people do, but we had no idea that was gonna happen. It just caught people's imaginations. It just came along at a really good time, I guess. I don't know. And the message, it's weird actually. I know this is going off piste a little bit, but I've thought a lot about why that song, and it's obviously because the message of it is so general. Like anybody can relate to that idea. Absolutely anybody. You don't have to be an anarchist or left wing to understand that idea of getting knocked down and getting back up again. So it spoke to loads of people across the political spectrum. Sometimes to our detriment, where some right-wing politicians start using it as their song, and so we'd have to go, look, you can't use that song. It's not, it's like, I mean, I suppose it's sort of that sort of thing that happened to, that happened a lot to Donald Trump when he was using other people's songs.
He was using John Fogerty, and John Fogerty's like, no, the song's not, no.
All that sort of thing, and so we had quite a bit of that. Like right-wing politicians wanting to use it, and it's going, no, you can't use it. It's, everything you stand for is everything we hate. But it was the fact that it was like so, the message of it sounds so uplifting and so general that it worked. And so everybody could find something. That song, we get, that song gets played at weddings, it gets played at funerals. It gets played at football matches. It gets played at every sort of thing, every sort of event you can think of. It's bizarre. It's just like, and still to this day that happens.
Well, I got to ask you, and it does, but I got to ask you. So the song's popular, and then they bring you to America, and you're doing every TV show. What is that like for you guys? I know you did Letterman, Homer Simpson. I mean, you guys became. At that point, you became a part of American pop culture, and I'm a pop culture junkie, and people I know were pop culture junkies. In college, we would smoke pot and watch Letterman. Okay, that was something you do because he was on, and then So, what was it like when what was the world? Because you took America by whirlwind. What was it like when you guys came over?
Yeah, it was amazing because we got chucked into that world. We didn't have a clue what we were laying ourselves in for or what that world was like. And we were just getting shifted from one place to the next. and then you'd be on. Rosie O'Donnell was completely obsessed with the song. She played it for weeks and weeks on her show, and then she got us on there. And to be honest, at the time, I was like, who's Rosie O'Donnell? Why is she so obsessed with this song? You just think, all right, okay, fair enough. And so you don't understand a lot of that. We didn't understand how much cultural cachet all those people had, really, because it had never been. It were pre. Because it were kind of pre-internet in a way, in that you didn't have YouTube to watch all those clips of people on Letterman, or people on Jay Leno, on people on Keenan Ivory Wayans, all these different people's shows that we did. We didn't know who Barbara Walters was, Who's she? Well, she's got a program that's on at 6 o'clock in the morning or something. And we have to fly there after a gig. In fact, I think it was a gig after. I think we played in Philadelphia. Actually, it was the only time we went in a private jet. We had to get from Philadelphia to New York really early in the morning or something. And it was something like, I don't know, it was somebody really high up in Universal or something. It was their private jet or something. And it was just hilarious. And then you turn up at Barbara Walters, and Barbara Walters goes, "So what do you mean anarchy? What are you on about talking about anarchy?" And Alice is like, "Yeah, we're anarchists. We're really serious about it." And you just think, this is bizarre. We're on there talking about anarchism to Barbara Walters, and it's like just a little feature and that, and then we go and do another song.
Now,
so we're like that all the time. Jay Leno, he was lovely. He came in the dressing room, said hello, chatting away to us. And then you go on and do Tubthumping, and and we change the words to sing about, Mumia Abu Jamal. David Letterman never came in to see us, though.
He's like that, though. He was always in his own thing. So what was your experience in America? Because you were getting treated as stars. I mean, you are celebrities. So what is that like for you guys who, once again, people in America would have thought you were overnight successes. They would have said, oh, these are one-hit wonders. They haven't been doing it for long. But you weren't. Yeah. You've been busting your ass for a long time. But what was it like for you to live? I mean, you had to get treated nice.
Yeah, we did. But we felt uncomfortable with it all the time. It was like, it just felt weird. Because, we'd done that thing where we'd come to America and done the, 7 weeks in the back of a transit van touring around. Going to everywhere, and that was amazing. That was an amazing experience. That actually was a better experience than what happened with Tubthumping in a way, because now when Tubthumping's happening, there's stuff around you that's happening that you're not really aware of, and you kept out the loop a little bit. Universal did this thing right, which is a brilliant marketing ploy. I've got to admit. They released their single as a limited edition single. So then you had to buy the album if you wanted the song. So we ended up selling millions of albums because people wanted that one song. And it was before iTunes, so you couldn't just buy that one song, you had to buy the album. And so in a way it was really good for us because you had to buy the whole album and it had, I don't know, 10, 12 other songs on. They were saying different, much more explicit political messages in those songs, for instance. But what we also had to do is we started putting Tubthumping as the last song in the set. Because we were doing these shows where people were coming along just to hear that one song. They were transient fans who just wanted to hear the song. And so we were like, right, well, we had the song quite early in the set. It was like about the 5th song in the set. Those people are just going to, they're going to lose interest, so they're just going to go. So we were like, right, we'll do Tubthumping last. And so people had to wait. So we got to do, so it was just, it meant a lot to us that we were exposing people to all that. And I know that album probably ended up in a load of bargain bins or second-hand shops. Because a couple of years later we were out of favour on that. But at the time, little things like that were really mattered to us because you feel as though you've lost control a lot of the time, and you're going into stuff not knowing what's gonna happen. I remember me and Alice like one night going on a late night radio chat show, and it was something that we'd never experienced, and we weren't warned about what it was going to be. And it were these two guys who did like a problem thing where people phoned in, but it were really heavy. It were people phoning in saying that they're being abused by their uncle or their dad or their stepdad or something like that. What should I do? And these guys there going, get the fuck out of there. Just leave. Get out. Move. And me and Alice were like, whoa, this is a new world. It's a completely different world to anything we'd expected. And then so that'd be like 2 o'clock in the morning. You'd leave that. Then at 5 o'clock in the morning, you get a call going, right, you're going to WBCD in Shitsville, and you're going to do a morning the drive. What do you call it? The
morning drive show. Yeah,
morning drive show, and you've got these two idiots asking you what your favourite colour is or something, and you're thinking, what? So it was extreme. It was totally extreme.
Now, I want to ask you...
It wasn't that period was the most enjoyable period of being in Chumbawamba, because I don't think it was. I think the most enjoyable time had been before that, when we were quite big and we were doing everything ourselves. But that time was the most fascinating time. And it was the most interesting time. And it was something that we really wanted to do and experience and see what that world was like.
Well, was it hard with some of your fans? Because, I know you get a hit. Because, it was funny. There used to be this brewery in Burbank where I lived. And it was called Golden Road. It's still around. And it started out as this little place. And then it went to this brewery. And then one of the big companies bought it for a shitload of money. And I know people are like, oh man, they're selling out. I'm like, well, isn't that the idea? Like, you start a company and then all of a sudden someone goes, hey, here's $15 million. Well, I said, I'm not going to say no. And if they're giving you creative control, you're not selling out. But that's always the idea. I mean, we get into creativity or you start a business. Well, yeah, you do it from your heart. But the end game is you want to make money, and people don't sit there. So I always crack up when people go, and it happens with screenwriters. So you wrote that movie. Remember this movie? You wrote this. Well, yeah. Well, guess what? They offer me $3 million to do this movie, or I could just write this shit thing for maybe $15,000. So people don't get it. But what was it like with your fans? Because I know some of them were pissed off because they thought, oh, you've abandoned your roots.
Yeah. We had a lot of that. We had a lot of. You've sold out. I think part of Chumbawamba's philosophy from day one had always been, we think we've got some really good ideas. We think we've got, and then we start to think, actually, we're writing quite good songs as well, and we're incorporating those ideas in the songs, and we've got stuff to say. Why would we not want as many people as possible to hear that? And that almost became our mantra. And when it got to the point of signing to a major label in '97, at that point, we knew there would be a backlash. We absolutely knew there would be a backlash, because that was just the culture that we were involved in, that people would be like, they've sold out, stuff. I think creatively we needed to do something different. We needed a new experience. We wanted to talk to as many people as possible. But what was fascinating about that time, and I only realised this retrospectively, in fact I only realised it quite recently, was that because social media didn't exist then, we had no way really of telling our loyal fan base what we were doing or what we were trying to do or how we were trying to do it. We sent out a newsletter once every 3 months or something. And then other than that, it was just like newspaper articles, but they wouldn't talk about that. So we weren't, so like nowadays, like if we were doing all that again, we'd be tweeting every day going, right, we're going to go on Letterman. It's worth watching. We've changed the words to sing about Mumia Abu Jamal, or whatever it was we're going to do. Alice is on Politically Incorrect tonight. You should watch it. She's talking about shoplifting, or she's talking about the LGBTQ movement. You know, whatever. You know, it would be the. But we never had that. We never had that sort of access. When I showed the film recently, last year, at a screening, there was a couple there who were saying, "Look, I'm really glad we came along to see this film because we had no idea that that's what you were trying to do. We just thought you've sold out, you've abandoned all your fans, and you've just gone off to you know, and you just sucking corporate cock." And I get that. I get why people thought that, because I thought, yeah, how we didn't have those sort of lines of communication where you could just tell people on a daily basis what you were doing and how you were trying to make a difference. And it was only so part of the reason, and that goes back to actually making the film in a way, is to sort of like let people know that no, look, we were trying to do something. You know, we were trying to do something. So it's not only letting people know that who only know the song. It's turned out that it's letting people who were previous Chumbawamba fans know that that's what we were doing as well. So it served a few purposes.
So with Chumbawamba, why did you leave?
It was really pragmatic. It's really boring. What happened was we'd done a few albums after Tubthumper, and we were selling less and less albums. Less and less people were coming to see us. We made actually, that's maybe one of the mistakes. One of the mistakes we made was that when we had all that success, we stopped playing as often, and we did like more. We were doing like a lot of TV, as you know. We were doing a lot of TV shows, and we were going around the world just doing TV shows or radio shows and stuff like that. And we stopped touring as much, so we weren't out there as much, talking to the people who would always come to see us. So when that era was over and it felt like we'd fallen from grace, that audience had moved on. Our old audience had moved on. And so we went back to playing smaller shows with less people at those shows. And we were selling less albums because we didn't write another Tubthumping. And so we made this decision after a few years, like, we'll do one more album. We'll give it absolutely everything, agree to do absolutely everything, see if it makes any difference. And we did that for a year, and it made no difference whatsoever. We did that thing where we tried to cut down on, you know, we tried to make all these savings because we were losing loads of money doing it all by now. So we tried to do that thing where you look at the rider and you think, right, let's cut the rider down. We'll save money on the rider. We took orange juice off the rider, and that was it, thinking that would make a difference. And then you look at your crew and you think, right, let's take less people out on tour. And then we just had massive arguments about who would be the person that who we would not take on tour. And in the end, we just like kept them all. So it was the same size. So there was like 8 in the band, and there was about 6 or 7 crew still going on tour. And so we were just losing a fortune. So we made this decision about this album, and it didn't make any difference. So then me, Alice, Damba and Harry all left at exactly the same time. But at that point, the others who could sing, they were doing an acoustic thing, and they took the band off in a different direction, doing like a more folky acoustic type thing. And they found a new audience. That worked for about 7 years, I think they did that. They found like an audience within the folk world and started playing at folk festivals and stuff like that around the world. And that was really successful.
Well,
I'm not entirely sure why that stopped, but it did.
For you, what is it like when the band stops? Because your whole identity is wrapped up in the band. It's been forever. I mean, it's something that, this is what you do. Did you suffer depression? I mean, what was that first few months like? It's so funny because we always have to adjust. Like, I grew up in New Jersey. I lived on the West Coast for 25 years, LA 18 of it. When I moved back to New Jersey, even though I'm right near Philadelphia, LA, I had to decompress. Like, I didn't have to sit there and go, I'm going to go an hour and a half for 8 miles. Here I go, instead of saying a show's at 8 o'clock, I can leave at 7:30 instead of a show's at 8, I have to leave at 6. You decompress. For you just came from, you experienced something that a very, very, very small percent of people, recording an album is one thing that people don't get a chance, but having a hit, people don't get a chance. So how did you adjust to, as we call it, civilian life when you're right out at the beginning of the group?
I was an idiot. I was a total idiot. I was really arrogant. I thought I didn't have to. I thought, right, I've stopped doing that. I'm not going to do that anymore. And I was like, right, I'm not going to use that to further my career. I feel like I should be appreciated as an individual, as an artist, as a creative. I shouldn't have to use the name Chumbawamba to get, to move on to my next thing. That was a really big mistake. Alice, on the other hand, she knew what she wanted to do before she left Chumbawamba. And so she put everything in place for that to happen successfully. And she used the fact that she used to be in Chumbawamba. And it worked really, really well for her. And I sort of regret being so up myself that I thought, I won't need to do that. And I moved to Brighton around about that same time as well, and I became a dad around that same time. So there's a lot of different stuff going on that meant that I sort of didn't do much for a couple of years. I sort of became, principal, I was looked after the kids basically for a couple of years.
Okay.
Once I sorted out what I wanted to do next, which was, then I started making documentaries.
So now, what are you going to do now? You had the documentary 2 years ago. What's your focus? Because people who are creative, they never stop. I mean, you can sit there and say that's why comedians and actors are going till they're 80 or 90, because it's not unfortunate, but it can be frustrating, but it's in our heart. So what are you going to do now? Is there more films in the future, or what are you going to do?
No. What happened actually was that once we finished that film, I sort of felt as though I was always aiming for that to be the goal, and that the films I made prior to that, when we were trying to learn the craft, and meeting Sophie was amazing because she was so brilliant at it that I learned a lot from her about it as well. But then when we finished that film, I said to Sophie, do you think we'll make another film together? Because, this has gone so well and we've worked really well together. And she just went, nah, I don't think so. I was like, why not? Why don't you want to make a film with me? And she was like, well, I don't think, to be honest, she said, it's not that you can't make documentaries, but I think it's better if you're in front of a camera or on stage or something. And so, weirdly, I started writing a one-man show. So I said, look, well, I started writing this one-man show. And she was like, well, why don't you write that and I'll direct that one-man show? And I was like, oh, all right then. So I wrote this one-man show and she directed it. And we toured it for about a year around the country, around the UK mainly, and did loads of shows with that. And then that sort of ran its course. And then we were like, right, what should we do next? And then we were like, well, we had a friend we have a friend who works for a production company in Brighton, and he was like, why don't you film the one-man show? And we were like, yeah, okay, let's film the one-man show. But then we were like, yeah, but what would we do with that? That's fine, if you film a one-man show, but then we can't. What do we do with it? And so we were like, actually, I think we're gonna incorporate the one-man show into something else. And so we started writing. We sort of had this idea for a TV series. And that now has grown and grown and grown into something that we're now trying to write. And I've never written a TV series before, so it's really challenging. But we've now got this new idea that's come out of the one-man show came out. The one-man show came out of the film, and the TV series has come out of the one-man show in a way. So we're doing that. We're trying to write a TV series that's me, an older version of me, a younger version of me, but it's basically also the main storyline is about my son getting sucked into. Do you know Andrew Tate? Is he big in the States?
I'm familiar with him.
Joe Rogan, that sort of
thing.
Yeah,
I'm familiar with Andrew Tate.
Yeah, those sort of people. So it's about my son's getting sucked into that world. So we want to write a thing. We're basically writing a thing about toxic masculinity and how you counter all that sort of thing, because that's quite big at the moment.
It is.
And so, but weirdly enough, it's a comedy. It is a comedy. or drama comedy, as you now call them.
Oh, they're great dramedies. They're dramedies.
The dramedy, yeah. So I've never done that before, but like in the one man show, right? Part of the one man show is about this thing about you've got to find your mojo, you've got to step out your comfort zone, you've got to do the things you're most afraid of, and so I sort of took that on as like a sort of, well, if I'm saying that in the one man show, I've got to do that as well. So that's so like I was terrified about writing a TV series. Sophie again has been brilliant, so we've spent time structuring it and working out what and we've got different skill sets, which is what we found with the film. It's like she's really good at storytelling. I'm really good at coming up with ideas for what we can include, how we can do scenes, and she's really good at structuring it all together. And it's sort of similar with the TV thing. She's really good at working out all that 3-act thing or whatever, or how a story progresses and that. I can just do dialogue.
See, that's what counts. This has been great. I have one question here. This may have come across as an odd question to you, and I saw it when I saw the trailer, and I saw it on your album cover. The face with the teeth.
Oh yeah.
What is that? I want to know what that is.
So in the film, we call that character Baby Ed. Basically, that's the cover of the album. That's right. The cover of the Tubthumping album. But it was but that head, EMI Japan made us all one of those heads each, and when we were trying to think of how to do voiceover in the film, we were like, oh, let's not just do voiceover. Let's try and think of a different way of doing it. And I just remember one day I found that head in the attic in my house, and it's slightly rotting and that. And I took it into the office where Sophie was, and like, look what I found! Found this head. And so, everybody tried it on and that, and then we were like, maybe we can use it in some way in the film. And so we decided to make that character be, like it's sort of like an angrier, younger version of me kind of thing, who's always berated. He berates me all the way through the film. He's horrible to me, actually. He's really horrible to me. But he just became a character in himself, and we thought it was funny that because he symbolised Tubthumping as well, because he was like the character who was on the album cover. It just felt as though it all made, to us, it made a lot of sense. But also, you never see that in a music documentary, anything like that. People don't do that in music documentaries, nor do they give the main protagonist such a hard time in a music documentary. So it was ideas like that we thought were sort of fresh and different and new. So we had, I hope you can tell that we had a lot of fun making that film.
It is great, and it's great. And it says, I was wondering that head, because I know it from the album cover. I'm like, what is that head? But it's good. I know it's 100%. Yeah, I want to thank you for coming on, Dunstan. How can people, are you on social media?
Yeah.
How can they find you?
What am I on? I'm on Instagram. It's at Dunstan Bruce. Interrobang, the band I'm in, are on Instagram as at INTRRBNG. Sophie's on Instagram as So-and-So Pictures, who were the company who made the film. Need to find. You can really easily find me. So I don't make it very hard.
Good. So people, go find Dunstan. Go find Dunstan Bruce. Go to my website, coopertalk.net. You can find over 995 episodes on there. You can email me, cooper@coopertalk.net.
Who's going to be your 1,000th episode?
I don't know. I actually reached out for Alice Cooper because I thought Cooper Talk, Alice Cooper, but he's not doing press right now. So maybe I'll reach out to Bradley Cooper. So people, go to my website. Email me also, Twitter at Cooper Talk. Instagram, I'm at Cooper Talk 1. Remember, I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guest. Don't forget, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins, and I'll talk to you next time.